Question everything, question everything, question everything, question everything. Why?
Hey, it's Bowtie, and today I'm going to be starting this series off with the topic of learning. And that is the acquisition of knowledge or skills through experience, study, or by being taught. And I know that learning seems like such an exhausting chore, especially if you've participated in the American school system, which bases your success on how well you retain information, and disciplines you for failing to do so, which can really diminish your drive to continue learning, especially as a neurodivergent like myself. The main reason I'm making this is to point out that traditional school in society is for the most part neurotypical centered and hardly fair for POCs and other minorities. Secondly, changing the way and what we teach kids would have very positive benefits for the future of society if done correctly. An article, Stress and the Mental Health of Populations of Color, mentions that research has shown that while blacks or African Americans often have higher rates of psychological distress than whites, some studies also find that whites have elevated levels of depressive and anxiety symptoms compared to blacks. It also says that POC mental illnesses are more severe, persist for longer periods of time, and are more debilitating. I'd really recommend reading more of it from this article because it talks about very important data when it comes to systematic racism and bias. Having the stress of not only trying to get passing grades so the quality of your life doesn't decline, but having constant anxiety of being targeted by systematic racism and oppression 24/7 on top of that adds a significantly unfair disadvantage for the success rate of that particular minority. And speaking of getting a passing grade, TED Talk explains the idea behind how an insignificant number that no one will foresee in the future can be detrimental to the learning experience. The link to that video, as well as the resources used in this one, are in the description below. If you would like to watch that one and come back really quick, you can. But for those who don't have the time or motivation, I'll try to give a succinct summary of that. Basically, being able to consistently retry a level or subject until you can beat or understand it, even if it takes a few more tries, helps people learn significantly more than if they have an arbitrary count of failures hanging over their head. Making room for mistakes and then applying them is one of the biggest parts of learning, and everyone has the capacity to learn a subject. But some might not get it as quickly or have full comprehension like others acclimated to that specific subject or lesson. And in real life, if you mess up at work, do they fire you on the spot? Depending on the severity, maybe, but typically that's not how the world works. You're able to take what you've learned and apply it to the future scenarios in your life. Everyone has a different learning style, and schools don't cater to every individual and unique style. This can create gaps within the education, and students aren't adequately prepared to understand the material. Yet, they are expected to find a way anyway. Why do students have to be held accountable for the lack of proper understanding when they aren't given the tools they need from the teachers and school whose job it is to teach them, to help them learn? The answer isn't quite simple, but we can break it down into a few main parts. The school system was established April 23rd, 1635, and hasn't changed much since then. Hasn't changed much, not at all, just hasn't changed that much. It's 8 hours long, you get marked down for not showing up every day, sat behind desks, told to be quiet and obey instructions, or inflict further punishment. You're graded on a scale of A to F, much like the quality of a product. This is a direct correlation to the task force, rewarding only the highest quality of grading instead of nurturing mistakes, which everyone is capable of. This isn't the Industrial Revolution. We don't need workers in the classroom. We need creative individuals. Another article mentions William Farish, a tutor at Cambridge University in England 1792, came up with a method of teaching which would allow him to process more students in a shorter period of time. He invented grades. They go on about the ease the benchmark gave them to evaluate who deserved to get paid and if a product could be sold. Their salary also increased because of this, naturally. The only way to learn is by asking questions, and a child's curiosity is restricted based on the school's lesson plan, which only focuses on the same whitewashed topics. Now, I will acknowledge in America the existing diversity and flexibility when it comes to learning about one topic and supporting ones not directly related. I am, however, talking about the standardized testing and the same code that we are told to follow. Now, a computer presented with an equation or a problem would be able to spit out an answer in a couple seconds. A human brain, although the most advanced computer, doesn't work like that due to every single one working in different complex ways. The point I'm getting at is that maybe subjecting children to the same problem, expecting everyone to reach the same level of output, is setting them up for inevitable and unavoidable failure. Well, I know you might ask, well, can't they just ask more questions or stay after for tutoring? Good question! And to be frank, that really just boils down to taking the responsibility of teaching off the teacher and more weight on the student's shoulders. If they were taught in a more coherent way, they wouldn't be struggling to grasp the lesson. I had undiagnosed executive dysfunction, or ADHD, growing up, and found it incredibly difficult to follow along in class, especially if it was a subject I found boring. Math! I wasn't lazy. I loved to learn. I was simply uneducated on the way that my brain functioned, and I didn't know how I could better my learning experience. I did ask questions, but needed everything to be explained either a different way or in detail, and that can really slow down a classroom. It made me feel guilt and shame for falling behind and not knowing what to do about it. Only until I feared failing high school my senior year did I stay after school to get help with homework and do extra credit so I could pass. I shouldn't have had to though. Now, the CDC shows an exponential increase of neurodivergent diagnoses over the course of almost 2 decades, which only comes from the amount of research that has gone into understanding how they can affect kids. And it is slightly skewed for AFAB people due to the misdiagnosing and inequality in the healthcare system. So potentially it's even more than that. If students could follow their interests and passions, it might actually lead them to what they truly want out of life. And I'm fairly certain that given the opportunity, most people will choose something that they're passionate about or want to become better at. Ways to counter these issues would be the result of major education reform. You know, for example, giving students a broad survey to determine what kind of learning suits them best to tailor an environment in which they can achieve the most beneficial education. Instead of handing out a failing or passing grade, base it on the student's strengths. We're all different individuals, so how about we stop treating them like a machine? Rewarding students for asking questions, taking the time to ask how they can help re-explain it. Destigmatize asking questions. That way we're not guilty whenever we ask them. Introducing diversity and novelty in the classroom helps cultivate cultural awareness and empathy. Things we desperately need in the world right now. Now, I agree that children do need a general understanding of the world and subjects for context of what goes on and what's happened. I think high school is where students should be able to choose what subjects they want to learn and where to go in their career after using those lessons. Also, a huge contribution to the healing of society globally would be truly teaching kids about sex education and psychology, so they have a better understanding of what goes on with their bodies and their minds over the course of years, not just one and done. That means not inserting purity culture into it, and instead being sex positive and teaching everyone about consent and safe sex practices. No more blaming women for existing, and start holding sexual abusers accountable for the crimes. Overall, teaching how to respect each other and our differences. Forgiving student loan debt and creating a free education for college and trade school would give access for every person to choose their own path and their own career. There'd be no need to stay at a dead-end job that you hate for the sake of survival, only to die feeling empty and unaccomplished. People would do their jobs because they actually like them and want to do them. The quality of work would increase with that logic. Why would someone create bad quality service if they genuinely enjoy their job? Unless they're a beginner, it wouldn't make sense. Just a friendly reminder that my intention with these videos is to simply urge everyone to question the systems in place and gain critical thinking skills about who it actually aids. But that is all for today's video. I hope you enjoyed, and yeah, I'm excited to make the next one. It's gonna be a lot of research, like this has given me something to do. And on that note, you can join us next time, where we'll be discussing workplace reform, how money is actually worthless, and how to combat capitalism. But that's also have a fan-freaking-tastic day and question everything. Ooh, I like that. Question everything.